Hi, Guy Hammond, Strength and Weakness Ministries. We're here to prove that you can treat people in the LGBTQ community with dignity, kindness, love, and respect without lowering the biblical standard. Hey, listen, I'm in North Carolina. I'm staying at an Airbnb just outside of Raleigh. I'm here doing a few things. Number one, I'm writing my next book, my seventh book, Following Jesus in an LGBTQ World. It's being published by a new publishing company for me out of renew.org, a Christian church outfit, and really excited about that. I'll give you more information as the book is getting ready to be released, but I have to finish writing it, so that's why I'm here. Also, while I'm here in North Carolina, I'm doing a tour of different churches throughout North Carolina and Tennessee, teaching on all things LGBTQ and how it relates to us in matters of faith. And if this is something that you feel like would be a blessing to your church, we're booking right now for new workshops in fall, although there's not many spots left, but also then in winter of 2025. So contact us, reach out to us. We'd love to be a service to your church. For this question, we're going back to Ellen Radcliffe. Ellen is a professional family and marriage therapist. She's on my staff at Strength and Weakness, and she runs her own ministry, also Heart Set Above. And she's going to be talking about something that a lot of people ask about, and I think this will be a real blessing to you for parents and grandparents. What do you do if your young child begins to show characteristics more typical of the opposite sex? So, for instance, a young boy likes to put on mom's clothes and wear high heels. How should we respond to this? If this is something you've been experiencing or you've been wondering about, then this is the video for you. Go ahead and watch it now.
Many parents experience a low-grade panic if their young child begins to show characteristics more typical of the opposite sex. For example, if a young boy likes to play dress-up in his mom's clothes or high heels and makeup, or a young girl expresses a desire to urinate standing up. If this is something that you're experiencing, there are a few things to keep in mind here. Kids are curious. Not only are kids curious, but they are not bound by the social norms and stigmas that we are. How freeing for them. We should be careful to cultivate and encourage our children's curiosity while implementing appropriate boundaries around it. It's good for kids to be curious. That's how God made them. We want them to be delightfully curious in life, always discovering in wonder. Though we may need to implement some boundaries around our children's curiosity, we should always do so in a way that doesn't create tension or shame around the object of their curiosity. Could this be a stereotype to confront? This may be a great opportunity for you to weigh your child's behavior or tendency against God's expectations around masculinity and femininity. It could have less to do with your child and more to do with your own distortion around socially constructed, rigid gender stereotypes. Do not create shame or tension. I spoke to a teenager once whose mother was convinced that she was gay because of some of her mannerisms and characteristics. Side note, mannerisms and characteristics do not make someone attracted to the same sex. When I asked this teen if she was attracted to other women, she said, "I never have been, but honestly, because my mom keeps bringing it up, I figure I must be." Sometimes our own fear as parents can create so much tension that we implant experiences into our children's hearts. We need to make sure that we're handling our parental fear in a godly way, striving to see from God's perspective and responding to our children in love so that we don't induce shame into their hearts simply because of our own fear, distortions, and imperfections. Set appropriate boundaries in love, not fear. If you determine that a boundary is needed around your child's curiosity or tendencies, then do so lovingly in a way that does not create shame or tension around the subject. My 5-year-old son recently noticed my pedicure and told me how much he loved my pretty toes. A few days later, staring at my red toes, he said to me, "Mommy, when I get my toes painted, I want to get blue, okay?" Now, something like this might have induced enough fear in me to respond with something like, "What? No, you're a boy, and boys don't get their toes done. Only girls do. You don't want to be a girl, do you?" Instead, in an effort to redirect the conversation to buy myself some time to think about how to handle an official request for my son to paint his toenails, I said, "Oh, you like blue better than red, huh?" When my husband got home that night, we discussed how we would handle it if our son did make an official request to paint his toes. And we determined that for our son, this was not a matter of him having a desire to cross God's gender boundaries and present as a girl. This was an innocent, wonder-filled request from an uninformed child who genuinely liked my toenails and had not been warped by our culturally constructed gender norms. We both agreed that in that sense, we had no problem with him putting paint on his toenails. However, because we live in a culture in which painted toenails on a male could lead to certain assumptions about his gender identity, in an effort to be above reproach on this matter, we decided that we would not allow him to paint his toenails if he were to ever officially ask. Though our son has not yet made an official request for painted toenails, my husband and I have already worked out a response if he does. It goes something like this. You want to paint your toenails because mommy had hers painted and you really love them, right? That makes so much sense. But in our culture, painted toenails are mostly associated with women. Though it's not wrong to paint your toenails if you're a boy, it could be confusing to some people. So how about instead of painting your toenails, we put stickers on them? Now, you may choose to allow your son, for example, to paint his toenails. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I offer this as an example in how to think through boundaries that stem from love and not fear. It is possible. A client said to me once, "Oddly, I feel so relieved that you just said that," after I told her that it was possible that her 10-year-old son may experience persistent gender dysphoria into the future. She said, "Everyone else has assured me that it won't happen, that he'll grow out of it. But there's a part of me that knows that this could be a reality for my son in the future too. And ignoring that possibility doesn't take my fear away." Simply ignoring our fears and assuring ourselves that they are ridiculous and unfounded will do little to comfort us. In fact, ignoring our fears typically only elevates them. It is possible that your young child could experience gender dysphoria now or sometime in the future. There could be multiple reasons for this gender dysphoria, and there could be infinite ways of them expressing it. So seek to understand your child's experience and don't assume that they're experiencing gender dysphoria just because they're doing or saying something that you don't personally understand. For example, I once had a client call me in a panic because his 8-year-old son was tying his bath towel around his chest instead of his waist. It turns out the son just didn't know that men didn't need to cover their chests when getting out of the shower. But unfortunately, the dad's fearful response made this young man feel incredible shame. And he began to wonder if he was fully content in his gender. Not only do we want to prevent shame and tension around these tender topics for our kids, we also never want to assume we know what their experience is. Instead, we need to seek to understand and draw out their experience calmly, not fearfully. Studies have shown that up to 98% of young children with gender dysphoria will outgrow it by the time they reach adulthood. So allow this knowledge to soothe your fearful heart as you watch your child navigate the confusing world of gender expression in our current culture. As with all parts of their development, we can't expect our children to perfectly understand and execute some of the complex constructs of our world. Just as we would not expect our 2-year-old to run without stumbling or our 13-year-old to adhere perfectly to a budget, so we can't expect our young children to know exactly how to wield their masculinity or femininity. Gender expression is a process that evolves throughout development and beyond. Let's walk alongside our children as they discover the nuances of their masculinity or femininity, always pointing them to God's definition and expectations of masculinity and femininity, never the world's expectations.